Hello, everybody. So first of all, Rex and I are keenly aware that we stand between you and beverages and snacks that are out in the hallway. So we're going to try to use our time wisely as a result of that. So I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to make a bold statement here in a minute. But first, I want to make sure that you're convinced that I'm qualified to make that bold statement. And then Rex is going to talk to us about data. So I'm going to focus on the AI part. Rex will focus on the data part. So here's the qualification part of it. I've been in tech for a really long time. I asked for an Intellivision for Christmas of 1981, and if you know, you know, Intellivision versus Atari 2600. But I received the TRS-80 color computer that appears here in this picture that was taken on my 12th birthday. Not a coincidence that I have Mark Hamill's haircut from Empire Strikes Back in that picture. I can't exactly pull that off today. So I've been doing tech for a really long time, 30 years professionally, another 12 as a hobby. I was part of the IGNW acquisition that CDW made in 2020, been a field CTO for the digital velocity practice since, and I've concentrated the last 18 months on analyzing the AI market and talking to customers about where they can do their entry. So here's my bold statement. I'm gonna describe AI's timeline in the entire market in 2 slides. That's my bold statement. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're using AI to help our most important customer. And then, like I said, Rex is going to talk about both the current state of data and what it means to make your data ready for AI. So first, let's do this 2-slide thing. So slide number 1, we've seen this before. AI is no different than these other major technology disruptions that we've seen in the last 30 years. So think about the disruptions that we had with internet, with mobile, with cloud. We're seeing again with AI. A useful tool for trying to describe what a disruption like this is going through is to use the Gartner hype cycle, which we're borrowing here. This is our opinion as to where we are with AI in this current state. So a snapshot of what this looks like. Every technology goes through what's called the peak of inflated expectations. We think that happened when you saw headlines like ChatGPT passes the bar exam two springs ago. We think that we're going to move through the trough of disillusionment and ultimately to the plateau of productivity much more quickly than we did with cloud or some of these other technologies. And the way to think about it is, think about where the market and where you were with cloud in 2008, and that's about where we are with Gen AI today. So think about what were you doing with cloud back then. That's how early we think it is in Gen AI, but we're going to move through this much more quickly. Now, I have the good fortune of following Connor pretty frequently when we do these kinds of talks, so I'm well experienced at having him show my money slide 10 minutes before I do. So I'll give you the slightly longer version than he did. The general idea here is if you look at the axis at the bottom here, we think that there's some kinds of AI that every organization on the planet is going to implement. And there's some kinds of AI that only a select few will. As you move left to right across this continuum, data complexity and data volume will increase. Security is important throughout the entire continuum. The easy button for AI is to take the applications that you're already using to run your business today. Every ISV on the planet is currently implementing some kind of Gen AI feature. So whether you do a lot of ticketing with ServiceNow, you turn on the Now platform. If you've got people who spend their days in the Adobe suite, you turn on Firefly. Or the 800-pound gorilla in this space is, of course, Copilot for the M365 suite. At some point, though, you've got some business process or some trigger that goes beyond the confines of what we're now calling AI as a feature. And what most people think is that you have to jump all the way over here to the right-hand side to AI as a factory, where you've got a GPU farm at the bottom, you've got an army of data scientists at the top, you've got a software stack between the two of them, and they're creating some kind of custom model for your business process. And if you're Fortune 100, if you're financial services, if you're biotech, a couple other niche workloads, you absolutely need this. But what about everybody else that doesn't have the deep CapEx and OpEx pockets to pay for this stuff? This is where we get AI as a product, where you can take a general purpose LLM, think GPT-4, think Llama, think Claude from Anthropic. You can host it in a variety of different places, in cloud or on-prem. And you use a growing list of techniques like retrieval augmented generation, like Miracle, like multi-agentic workflows to focus those LLMs on your specific business problem. You don't need it to know who the last 30 Oscar winners were. You need it to focus on your specific business problem. So how do you do that? So let's talk about how we use this for our most important customer, and that's CDW. We're going to focus here on AI as a product. So you might be familiar with retrieval augmented generation. Let me give you a crash course if you're not. This is a slide taken from NVIDIA's blog article on it a couple of falls ago. Retrieval augmented generation was invented by Meta and some academics in 2020. And the general idea here is you take some content you already have, some data, and you pass it through something called an embedding model, where you're converting that data into a binary-like format that's very similar to the inner workings of an LLM of your choosing. You store that in a vector database. That's phase one. Phase two is there's some kind of user query that you also pass through that same embedding model, and then you make a preliminary query to the vector database. You take the original query and this conditional answer, and you pass it to the LLM of your choice, and that combination focuses the LLM on this particular query in that domain of data that's in the vector database. So it's a way to focus that. And we use that for our own internal use. We kind of think of CDW as customer zero. Think about the account executive that you work with and their need to get a subject matter expert on something like a cloud migration. So you see here, there's a query here asking about what kinds of Kubernetes services do each of the CSPs offer. And you see an answer that comes back in a matter of minutes, instead of having to engage with a human subject matter expert, have to get on their calendar, have to get them in front of the customer individually. Instead, we compress that time cycle, make better use of that account executive's time by putting something like this in their hands so that they can get an answer sooner than later. But the trick is, we're not using standard retrieval augmented generation for this. And the reason for that is what we found is there's two places where RAG runs into a limitation. Either you put too much data in that vector database, at which point it starts to hallucinate, it starts to lose the ability to focus on a particular content domain that you want. Or, as is the case here, we've got information about Kubernetes services for each of the three hyperscalers. The terminology used to describe each one is very similar, but the nuance is important. We found if we put all of them in the same vector database, it would come back with answers intended for one hyperscaler, but the specifics were about another. So how do we fix that? This is where we started to get into, and we're launching this as an internal pilot here in a couple of weeks, this multi-agentic workflow, where what we did was we created a RAG agent that just had the Azure data in it. Then we created a second one that just has the AWS data in it. Then a third one that just has the GCP data in it. And then we put this sort of router on top of it that gets the queries from the users. The responsibility of that agent, or that router, is to figure out which, and it might be more than one, agent should be invoked to try to solve the query that the user input. It then makes the calls out to the individual agents as needed, aggregates the results, sends it back. And when you do that, you get an answer like we saw on the previous slide. So that's my part of this. My friend Rex here is going to spend the next few minutes talking about data in its current state and what you can do to make your data ready for AI.
Yeah, thank you.
Here you go, my friend.
Really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to try to cover a really wide space. I can't do it in 2 slides, but we're going to cover the current state of data in just a few. Then we're going to jump to how you can build a data ecosystem that will help you get AI ready sooner rather than later. Current state of data, honestly, when it comes to AI, not that great, right? What we're finding across the board is that the data ecosystems and businesses from mid-market all the way up to the Fortune 50 really haven't had the depth of investment that we'd like to see. Governance becomes a continuous challenge. Folks are looking at their data and saying, you know what, it's just not going to be in a state that we can actually do AI. That doesn't mean people aren't doing AI, right? But as we heard from Katie earlier and talking with Pete and listening to Pete here, that bad data can get to be a real problem as you go forward. And all of a sudden, you have something that's a POC that never reaches to any ROI. And none of us want to really have that. But really, when we look at data, it's the biggest barrier to implementing successful AI. Now, if this is Copilot and you're looking at, hey, listen, I have a SharePoint with 10 to 15 years of data that's never been really looked at, secured, or either monitored, that's usually what happens when Copilot gets turned on and 24 hours later the CISO turns off Copilot because he was able to search and find somebody's salary or some other sensitive data. The lack of governance within the platform became a real challenge for them, right? Companies that look at their data and say, hey, listen, we want this to be one of our biggest our biggest outcomes this year. We want to be able to drive data, we want to be able to drive AI, and then all of a sudden it comes to a screeching halt because of a lack of governance. Or global CIOs saying, hey, listen, I want to do Gen AI. When I looked at the interesting thing was I looked at the data and analytics governance, or the survey of global CIs, data and analytics and data governance were not listed. Cybersecurity was listed, AI was listed, but the core foundation of Gen AI was not even listed. It wasn't a priority globally for CIOs, although it was the lifeblood of a lot of what was being done, what they were craving, right? So data currently, I'd like to say, hey, listen, we're all ready to charge forward with AI, but in reality, data becomes a constant challenge for us. So how do we get there? And really, it's not as hard as we're making it. And a lot of it is actually the fault of the data engineers, the data people that are out there, right? We've been doing data for so long in the shadows, producing reports. We're not always thinking about how are we going to keep up with the future. And let's face it, AI is moving so fast. I mean, Pete and I were talking earlier, and I was like, every time I talk to him, there's something new in the AI space. So we're going to talk about alignment, governance, and innovation, and how to build a system that will allow you to be able to adapt to the AI world. So the first thing is embracing complexity. A lot of folks out there, as far as a lot of vendors that are out there, the way they come to market is try to make their data platform be simple. Just come to us, we'll simplify the whole thing. Now this is true whether it's ML ops or anything within the data space. Come to us, it's always simple. It rarely is. You start implementing that, you start running into roadblocks, you start having challenges. There is a complexity to data. Your business is unique. The way you gather data is unique. If you're in the regulatory space, if you're in a regulated environment, you have even more challenges to address within the data, so embrace it, but remove chaos. So as you look to ways to accelerate towards whether it's AI or any solution, think about, this is a complex system, I need to honor that complexity, but let's not start creating chaos by having little point solutions, access databases floating around, spread marts, that kind of stuff, right? We need to reduce the chaos. The next piece, for those that have Lean Six Sigma background, go to Gemba, which is just, there's this old concept of a Gemba walk, right? I always liken this to House MD, the old TV series. House would say, everybody lies, right? And I don't really believe that, but I always want to go to the source. The Gemba walk is actually walking to the source and looking at it, measuring it, understanding it in depth. So if you have somebody that produces data for you, whether that's a spreadsheet you take to the board, or it's a report, or anything else, and you want to figure out what is the business value that's coming that I need to deliver in data, go to that actual value point, right? Understand it in depth, because that will allow you to articulate true business value that will drive the overall architecture. Avoid vendor lock-in. This is a big thing for me, because if you're locked into a single vendor, your data strategy is now being dictated by that vendor's pace of innovation. There's a lot of great vendors. All the CSPs are amazing. All the on-premise solutions are amazing. If you're going to go into a single vendor solution, though, go into the walled garden knowing that that door might close behind you. It may be more like the Hotel California. You're never going to leave. It's one of those things that you need to think about that vendor solution, and is that vendor going to actually articulate your vision for the long-term future? If not, spread out, embrace the complexity. Figure out what your business value is. Map every single data solution through business value. Don't build the platform based upon the coolest tech, right? And probably the most important thing to drive alignment, and this is the one where I see it missed 80% of the time, get senior most executive buy-in. And this is critical for data governance. Somebody as high up on the totem pole as you can go, maybe look a little higher and find somebody that says data is important. We all say we make business decisions based upon data. I want to see the reports. I want to see the data. I want to actually see how it flows, because if that's there, you're well on your way to data success and data excellence. If not, if there's no executive sponsorship, that can become a real challenge. If you do one thing, get that executive sponsor as a takeaway from this meeting. You will be rewarded. So governance is probably the biggest thing we talk about nowadays. I mean, even if nobody has a data ecosystem, if data quality and data challenges are all over the place, governance is really where it comes down to. And I think the very first thing we got to think about is governance has always been a bad word. I mean, everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is going to slow us down, this is cumbersome, it's going to take forever. And that's true, honestly. Historically, data governance was just awful. I can't count the number of data governance meetings I've been in, and they're just always boring and slow, and I wanted to get data delivered. In fact, one of my coworkers, Chris, right now, who leads our head of pre-sales, he and I met as he was a customer and I was an engineer. The person who was on the Data Governance Council hired me to lock down that system because he kept eating up too much processing power. I didn't do it. I actually built some parallel systems that we could sort of constrain, but empower. But that was the kind of thinking. Let's lock it down. Let's limit. We're moving too fast to limit. We need flexibility. We need to embrace the complexity. We need something that's going to allow us to keep up with something that changes every week. So when you become a data leader, when you look at that from an executive sponsorship, when you say, this is important to me, you start generating data culture. And I would say data culture, when it comes to governance, is probably one of the core elements because it's almost like a mental firewall, right? We've been doing cybersecurity training forever. Everybody knows don't click on the link, watch what the email says, those kinds of things. We still have problems. Nobody's training on data culture. Think of this. Most people in this room have been trained to accept the first half a page results from Google as reality, right? Now take that mindset. Go to ChatGPT, go to Claude, go to your favorite LLM, ask for an answer. You get this nice long bit of text. Are you just run with it? That's how we're trained, right? Now think about that making a critical business decision. Maybe we took and we built a custom model, but what happens if you're not trained to look at that data critically? It could be the small thing like a little date. It could be a number. It could be a misattribution to a person. Some of the hallucinations have been really tricky. I mean,
wait, are you saying that LLMs are sometimes wrong? Is that
occasionally?
possible?
I mean, I don't want to create a havoc here, but
okay.
You know.
If you say so, I mean, you're the data guy.
Well, you know, you're the AI guy. I mean, you know, it's if we can look at data critically, we will be more successful. And that's probably the biggest aspect of it. The other piece is embed data governance on day zero. So this is a lot of things to do, but if we're trying to deliver data fast, how are we going to do all of this? Embed it in the platform. We do something called minimum viable data governance, MVDG, right? So what we're doing is when we implement data platforms at CDW, we start building in data quality, we start building in governance, we start reaching out and helping you find those natural stewards or data champions and bring them forward. I mean, my first data steward was somebody that I would go to every week before I had to walk into the business review with all the leadership. And I'd be like, okay, Cheryl, I really need this data. I can't have it wrong. It has to be accurate. Boom, Cheryl gives me data. I walk on. I never questioned it. I was told Cheryl knew the data. Cheryl told me the data was accurate. I went in, all was good. Never got called out. Cheryl was a data steward. She was a data champion. Every single leader in that entire organization went to Cheryl, right? But if Cheryl took PTO, uh-oh. Can I just skip the meeting this week? I actually did skip the meeting one week because I couldn't pull the numbers together to save my life. I had no idea what she was doing. Going back to GoToGemba, when I actually sat down with her and said, hey, how do you do this? How do I pull it out? I took that engineer to pipeline. I never had to doubt, you know, my data again. And then Cheryl got to do more important things. So building your data governance in the platform, Another piece, and when Katie was up here with Aletha, talking about how they handle data governance within their organization. There's a partnership between the CISO and CDO that can't be ignored. This year, I've told my boss, my windmill that I'm jousting at, right, is going to be getting CISOs and CDAOs to sort of partner and be friends. Because security says, hey, listen, we're securing everything. Those data folks, they're just building an analytics platform. True, but everybody's making decisions based on that, right? But if I mess that up, I can literally hack the company internally. All I have to do is change some numbers, right? Data people are saying, well, the security people have our back. In the meantime, AI agents are running all over the place. Who's checking the code? If an AI agent generates more code or generates more of itself, who's checking that? Who's checking the data sources they're going to? How do I know somebody hasn't altered an AI agent to exfil data? I don't know. It's AI. It's all good. The data people have it. The AI people have it. We're not going to scan that. I'd probably advise against that. So embrace that partnership and embrace agility in the overall technology stack that you go to. We're moving too fast to stay sitting down. This is not the cloud 2.0. This is a fundamental change in reality for us. And innovation, right? Right fit data architecture is probably the most critical thing you can do here. Pete was mentioning vector databases. He was mentioning agents and reg. When you look at this data platform, embrace the complexity of finding the right tool and the right platform for that specific use case. The CSPs, Google, Azure, AWS, all have a wide variety of solutions that we can pull from. Embrace that diversity to be able to get the right solution. You will benefit from it. Right? Look to more agile architectures. If you're saying, hey, listen, I just need to modernize my warehouse, that's also sort of like saying, hey, listen, this AI stuff is just a flash in the pan, and I probably don't need to go after it. Because that warehouse is great for running some Cognos reports, where I started my career long, long ago. But when it comes to supporting an agentic workflow and supporting graph databases and supporting this and that, you need agility. Right? Pull it all together through the partnership with your vendors, CDW, the clouds, the on-premise solutions, build coherence across it through basic governance built into the platform, and then continually evolve. This is the other piece that folks sort of miss. They build the platform, they great, we did the investment, Lakehouse has been built, all is good, analytics are great, go AI. Woohoo! Pete? How many times has AI changed? How many times has our conversation changed in the last year?
It's changed like 4 times in 2025.
Exactly. So if I'm not evolving my data platform, Pete's the roadrunner, I'm Wile E. Coyote, and the rock's sitting on top of my head, right? He's going to keep going. I was hoping you'd make a beep beep sound.
It could be an Acme and well.
It could.
Yes.
Do I get a beep beep?
Not out of me.
Data is precious. I love this quote. Data is going to outlast us. Data is going to outlast what we think of AI. Everything that you're doing, everything you're generating, every document, every ERP output, every system, that data is precious. You got to treat it like it, govern it, guard it, know that it's actual value. Because if it leaks, well, that's usually a bad thing. All right, so bringing this home.
When we were prepping for this, one of the things that we encounter daily when we talk to customers is all of this can seem daunting. So where do you start? I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they think they have to solve all the problems with data platform and data governance before you get started with AI at all. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is, what's your why for AI? What are the business problems that you're trying to solve? Like, what are your top 10 business problems that you're having that would either get you more revenue or help you cut more costs? What are those 10 things? We can help you first identify those if you're struggling to identify them yourself. And then out of those top 10, there's maybe 3 that you've got the data necessary to solve those problems. So then let's focus on doing data governance and data platforms on just those 3, not the entirety of your enterprise, but just the stuff that is going to help you get through those first couple and most pressing business problems. So again, think about it as what's your why for AI? Why are you doing it? Don't just do it to satisfy a board member who read a Forbes article that said you should have an AI strategy. Have it be rooted in solving some specific business problem that you're having.
Absolutely. I mean, and this goes all the way down to that little drip of data in an Excel spreadsheet, right? What is the business value driver? What is the value that's going to go to that line of business person making a decision? And percolating it up. Like Satya Nadella recently made a quote, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's basically AI has yet to deliver business value or to really have its moment in the sun. It's where's its killer app? That sort of blew me away. I mean, head of Microsoft saying something like that. But I think if we look at AI differently and we actually ask ourselves, what is our why? Why do we want this? What value is it going to drive? Whether it's 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 2 hours a month, whether it's I'm able to train somebody better due to processing video, or whether it's I'm able to reduce accidents in a factory. But have a hardcore why of AI that person that you found as the executive sponsor for data and analytics and governance and all that kind of stuff way up there says, yeah, that's something I can get behind. That's something that I am passionate about, something that will help our company. And the rest of it is just table stakes. If you go to your business and say, do you trust your data? I used to, in smaller audience, I'd ask people to raise their hand, who trusts their data? And it would be sort of like this, no hands up, That just scares me, business after business with no trust in their data. And then when I ask them, does your data ecosystem give you the data that you need when you need it in the format you need it, and can the business get their data without having to jump through a lot of hoops? Hands stay down. We got to change that because AI is here. It's changing everything.
And it's still garbage in, garbage out is still the phrase that pays.
Yep.
And again, it seems daunting to try to do that with every single byte of data that you have in your enterprise. So don't. Focus on just those things you want to do with AI, solve it for that sliver, find the next 10 problems, and iterate over it. And slowly over time, you'll get enough of that data in governance, in an ecosystem where you trust it, that you'll be able to deliver business value.
And this is the role of people in AI, right? This knowing the why, being able to come together, getting different parts of the company to work together to make sure we're secure, that we're delivering value, right? This is a partnership long-term across every aspect. And AI is going to force us to work together. Verticals get left behind. Teams will work together and they'll be able to succeed in the age of AI. So that's about all I have.
We're good.
I think we're good. So we didn't scare anybody. Nobody's running away from the AI.
I don't think so. And their snacks, they're not running.
Snacks. So, all right, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you all.